So what we're seeing right now is a coordinated effort to basically take everything that the government does not want people sharing online and slap labels on it of hate speech, cyberbullying, fake news, and now Russian propaganda. They're just going to mix that all together in a giant ball and justify censoring it. And you can see when you take a step back and really look at what's going on, how coordinated this effort really is. But before I get into all of that in detail, I just want to point out really quick, because I've brought this up before and some people have asked me to expand on this. Yes, U.S. government propaganda use against the American citizenry is officially legal, and that doesn't mean they weren't doing it before. And how that works is, back in the day after World War II, we had the Smith-Mundt Act, which was more officially known as the U.S. Information and Educational Exchange Act of 1948. While they were shifting from wartime propaganda policies over to peacetime propaganda policies, they put this thing together, and one of the first things they did was specifically prohibit domestic propaganda dissemination. And the assurance was that Congress, academia, and the mainstream media were going to filter out the government's foreign propaganda before it made its way back to American soil. And as you can see, that's worked super well in the last 70 years. Especially if you recall the fact that back in the 70s, it came out on record that the CIA had planted their own journalists in the print and television media here in the U.S., specifically to bring the foreign propaganda home and disseminate it. That's what they got caught doing. But fast forward to the signing of the National Defense Authorization Act of 2013, in which they specifically amended the Smith-Mundt Act to allow American pro-government propaganda materials produced by the State Department and the Broadcasting Board of Governors to be released inside the United States. So that's it. The gloves have been off since 2013. If you've been wondering why it seems like we're tumbling down this crazy, insane rabbit hole matrix since then with the kinds of things that have happened in our media, now you know why. Because there's just no restrictions at all on this, of course, in the interest of national security. Fast forward now to the last couple of weeks, and it's just gotten really insane, a total Orwellian clampdown. You may or may not have even heard that this happened, but on November 22nd, the House introduced a bill that specifically had a section in there about Russian propaganda, which was passed on November 30. So they introduced the bill, and 8 days later, they're already passing it. This is H.R. 6393, the Intelligence Authorization Act for fiscal year 2017. In it, there's Title V, Matters Relating to Foreign Countries, Section 501, which calls for the U.S. government to, quote, counter active measures by Russia to exert covert influence. And then they have a list of media manipulation, and they specifically mention disinformation and forgeries. So that's another way of saying fake news. And as activist post pointed out, it's easy to see how this law, if passed by the Senate and signed by the president, could be used to target, threaten, or eliminate so-called fake news websites. And we've seen this happen really fast. They rolled out the fake news website list, which had all the alternative media on it, which was written by some liberal community college professor. It's not an official list, but it was passed around in the mainstream media as if it was official. Right at the same time that the House was introducing this bill, on November 24th, you had Washington Post put out this article about how experts are saying that the Russian propaganda effort helped spread fake news during the election, and they're referencing this website here called PropOrNot, which is a completely anonymous website. It just showed up in August of this year, so it's a brand new anonymous website, and the only place that the Washington Post is referring to when they call these people who have this website experts is by their own About Us description of themselves. I don't even feel like I should have to point out the fact that anyone can make a website and call themselves American citizens with a wide range of backgrounds and expertise, including professional experience in computer science, statistics, public policy, and national security affairs. Anyone can say that about themselves. It doesn't make it true. But these people have put out their own blacklist of Russian propagandist websites, and if you take a look at this list, you'll quickly see all of the alternative media is on there, along with WikiLeaks, DC Leaks, RT. It's just all mixed up together. In5D is on here. I mean, just everybody you can think of that would ever say anything negative about the American government. And then you have the Washington Post, of course, Bilderberg attending Washington Post, pushing that those people are experts, and they talk about how in their article they received the list ahead of publication. So they published this article on the 24th, but they say in here that they received the monitoring report, which was provided to the Washington Post in advance of its public release, identifies 200 websites as routine peddlers of Russian propaganda. So that's legitimizing this list, even though nobody knows who's behind this. But for a website that's so-called experts, this is how they figure out who propaganda is. They sent out this tweet on November 19th saying pretty much anybody hating on Soros is echoing Russian propaganda. It's a good rule of thumb. So according to the so-called experts at PropOrNot, if you hate on Soros and have anything negative to say about him, you're echoing Russian propaganda. That's experts, supposedly. They've also put up a bunch of other tweets that have been taken down where it's pretty clear this is not a group of experts, but more like a group of paid agitators. I mean, they say things like, oh, look at the angry Putinists and fascists, straight up motherfucking fascists. That's what we're up against. I mean, this is the people. They deleted these tweets after they were called out as looking less than professional experts. They're also calling for formal investigation by the U.S. government of anyone who has one of these alternative media websites. We strongly suspect some of these individuals have violated the Espionage Act. Espionage is one of the only crimes, by the way, that's not murder, but still punishable by death. They claim they're not doing a McCarthyite wish hunt, while at the same time that's exactly what they're doing in their own words. And Glenn Greenwald of The Intercept pointed that out, how this is basically the Washington Post promoting a McCarthyite blacklist from a new, hidden, and very shady group. Now, at the same time that you have that going on, all the stuff with Pizzagate has completely exploded. More and more, this is looking like a psyop. And that's not to say, people get real angry when you say you think Pizzagate might be a psyop. I'm not saying whether or not the stuff people think is happening within that is true or not. So far, it's a lot of circumstantial evidence that looks creepy as hell, okay? In my opinion, creepy as hell. But it's being used by this group of people. I mean, we're talking about the Podestas. We're talking about James Alefantis, who's the owner of Comet Ping Pong Pizza, who was the former lover of David Brock of Media Matters. Okay, this is a nest of political operatives, and they are using this entire Pizzagate thing to whip up this huge narrative about cyberbullies and hate speech and fake news causing real-life violence, and therefore you have to have a clampdown on it. First of all, I mean, the thing is over the top. Some of the Instagram posts that this guy, James Alefantis from the pizza place, have put out are not the kind of things that you would send out if you were the owner of a so-called family-friendly restaurant frequented by children where child sleepovers happen. You wouldn't send out these kinds of things. You just wouldn't. Nobody would, and he does. But beyond that, his avatar is literally a statue of Antinous. Antinous is the Greek teen boy lover, underaged boy lover of a Roman emperor. And it has been pointed out before that statues of Antinous remain without a doubt one of the most elevated and ideal monuments to pederastic love of the entire ancient world. So if this guy is a pedophile and he's running a pedophile ring out of his restaurant, he's also posting what is considered to be one of the most elevated monuments to pedophilia in the entire ancient world as his avatar. It's a little obvious. It's a little over the top. It's almost like hitting people over the head with it. It's so much, okay? This guy is now running to mainstream media outlets like the New York Times and Washington City Paper and NPR and Washingtonian, and he's saying things like, white nationalist conspiracy theorists made up of racist, homophobic individuals are loosely tying together theories.
Conspiracy theorists.
Thousands of threats and bizarre, unsubstantiated conspiracy theories about child sex trafficking.
I'm under assault, I'm being terrorized, so he's saying this is terror. It's all these people that are in chat rooms and on anonymous sites where they can hide behind screen names, so it's really unfair because we don't know who they are. And what he's basically doing is calling for not only the censorship of hate speech and cyberbullying, because he's saying he's being targeted. He's also said he's being targeted by thousands of cyberbullies. Basically, what he's calling for is the end of anonymity on the internet in the name of protecting people from violence and hate speech and cyberbullying. This is directly linked to a Soros, Obama, United Nations plan for everyone to have an internet ID assigned to them so that you will be tracked and traced everywhere you go online. Everything you say, everything you do will all be put together in one virtual file about yourself. I personally think that's probably already going on anyway. It's as if there's a whole narrative here that's been planned for a very long time. Again, the guy comes from a nest of political operatives.
This vast right-wing conspiracy.
And while that's going on, all at the same time on Sunday, you had a guy walk in to his pizza restaurant with a gun. He said he was armed to save the children, and he was there to self-investigate Pizzagate, so he's throwing out all the key phrases there to let everyone know he's part of the fake news plot to get this guy. Which the guy claims, by the way, is happening because he's a Hillary supporter, but that absolutely makes no sense. I mean, there's lots of people who are Hillary supporters that aren't targeted by thousands of people across the world for running a pedophile ring out of their pizza restaurant. So that just doesn't even make sense anyways. But then you have this guy, he walked into the pizza restaurant with an AR-15 and fired off a round into the floor. He walks in there. Oh, and by the way, he's an actor. So he has an IMDb page and everything. So an actor walks in and fires off a round, linking himself to this whole fake news, Pizzagate, cyberbullying, terrorism, conspiracy plot. I mean, look at this AP photo of the guy being arrested. I mean, it just looks like a movie, right? It's rich. It's so rich. On the same day that this is happening, the EU decides to add fake news to its code of conduct online. The code of conduct online is something that all of the major tech companies have signed. So you have Google, which means YouTube, you have Facebook, you have Twitter, Microsoft. All these companies have signed on willingly to suppress or censor hate speech while promoting the EU's counter-narratives. So that's promoting EU propaganda while censoring hate speech, which is very loosely defined, and as you've seen now, is all going to be rolled up into this giant ball of whatever they basically want to censor. And the EU has now said that these companies have 24 hours with which to censor this fake news and hate speech, or else they're going to escalate from non-legislative action to whatever the next, I guess, legislative action against these companies if they don't censor and shut down fake news and hate speech on the web. So this just happened. In the days leading up to it, the New York Times is putting things out about how the spread of fake news is provoking anxiety in Italy, and they're saying now Italy is going to leave the EU the way that the UK did. And so they're tying it all together. While at the same time, you have the State Department now completely refusing to answer questions from RT at their press conferences.
Do you think it is important to give a specific list of hospitals that you're accusing Russia of hitting? Those are grave accusations.
Once again, you're just wrong. I'm not leveling those accusations. Relief agencies that we find credible are leveling those accusations. So why don't you question them about their information and where they're getting it? And why don't you question your own defense ministry?
Journalists, just like the rest of us are, so it's, she's asking pointed questions, but they're not,
from a state-owned outlet.
But they're
Matt,
not
from a state-owned
the
outlet
questions
that's not
that she's
independent.
asking are not out of line.
I didn't say the questions were out of line.
Okay.
I didn't say the questions were out of line.
Okay.
But I'm not.
Oh no, I understand.
I'm sorry, but I'm not going to put Russia Today on the same level with the rest of you who are representing independent media outlets.
Hold on.
John Kirby, who's a State Department spokesman, straight up said we're not going to treat RT like other independent media anymore, which, a lot of our mainstream media is clearly not independent. They just toe whatever the establishment line is. That's why the alternative media even exists in the first place. And while that guy's busy taking himself real seriously, another State Department spokesman not even that long ago was caught on tape laughing it up about how their press conferences are an exercise in transparency and democracy.
Good to see you in this exercise in transparency and democracy.
Is that what it is?
Because he knows what a joke it is. Because going back to the beginning of this video, like I said, State Department propaganda is now 100% perfectly legal in the United States. And so what you're seeing right now happen is a concerted effort to shut down free speech on the web. And they're going to roll all of this together, and they're going to say it's fake news, and it's Russian propaganda, and it's hate speech, and it's cyberbullying, and it must be stopped. In a world where they can give you all of their propaganda, and that's fine. So in a world where our communication of what's happening around us is largely digital, they're now going to make it so that what you can share and see online is their propaganda, while censoring and shutting down anything that speaks against it. And it's just crazy that we're actually watching all of this happen. It's so far beyond any of the dystopic movies. But this is what's happening. And it's going to continue happening. So what people need to do is try to figure out where to go instead, because YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, these platforms are going to be more and more heavily censored, to the point that it's going to be very hard to share information. We just got to figure out what we're going to do next. Because I don't think everyone's just quietly going to take this.